Good morning. This is Talk of Tucson. My name is Paul Birmingham. In the studio today, quite an honor and privilege to have Mr. Ron Barber. Mr. Barber, one of the survivors of the January 8th shooting in Tucson, here to talk about an amazing concert which is coming up this Thursday. This is going to be March 10th, and this is really something that hopefully will continue to bring Tucson together. This concert is actually a fundraiser for the Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding. Ron, thanks very much for coming in. I know things have been incredibly hectic for you over the past few months, and we really do want to take some time to just thank you for all that you've continued to do for the community. We appreciate it very much, sir.
Thank you, Paul. It's really great to be with you this morning.
First of all, if you could tell us a little bit about this fund which has been set up. And this is the Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding. This is something that your family is behind. Tell us a little bit about this fund, and then we'll go into some of the specifics about how this concert is going to help out. We'll talk about the lineup for the concert. It is an all-star event. So for people who might not be familiar with what this fund is, tell us a little bit about the Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding, sir.
Certainly. It's probably best if I start by telling you how it even came into being.
Please.
When we were in the intensive care unit following the surgeries that I had after the shooting, my family, my wife, Nancy, my daughters, Chrissy and Jenny, and their husbands, Gwen and Jason, we got to talking about how it is that we could thank the community for the incredible outpouring of support that they've given to us, and I'm sure that they've given to all of the other families involved with the shooting that day. You know, we had literally thousands of letters and cards and text messages and emails, all wishing us well, sending us prayers and love and compassion. And the point that I would like to make, and I think is very true, and that is that the real Tucson is what we saw following the tragedy. The tragedy, I believe, was an aberration in our community. This is a very caring and very wonderful community to live in, and its heart is big. And so when we got this sort of support from the community, which was just so helpful in our healing process, we said, you know, what can we give back? How can we thank the community for its support? And secondly, how can we sustain and build on this incredibly positive energy that came out of the tragedy and that came to all of us? So the idea of a fund under the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona came to us, and we decided to call it the Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding, because we wanted to really cover those topics across the board in terms of all of the parts of our community. So the fund is set up to do several things. First of all, we want to initiate an anti-bullying program in public schools. Bullying can lead to mental disturbance, can lead to violent acts. We know that from other parts of the country. That's not to say that the shooter in this case was bullied. We don't know that. Right. But we really believe that if you're going to have a civil society, it really starts with children. How they respect one another, how they talk to one another, leads to how they're going to behave as adults. The second goal for the fund is to work with the Mental Health Authority here, the CPSA, to promote better awareness of mental illness symptoms and treatment services. From what we can tell, the shooter probably was having some mental health problems. We can't diagnose it, of course, from here, but it appears that that was what was going on. And something happened between what we were seeing or people were seeing in him and connecting him to treatment services. So we want to build better awareness of the availability of services and what to look for in your son, your daughter, your friend, whomever it might be, to get them into services. And the third goal is to work with the faith communities, the religious communities of our wonderful city, to say, you know, freedom of speech is essential to our democracy, but can we not ask each other to have discussions about difficult issues or hot political topics? Can we not ask each other to be more respectful? Can we not ask each other to be more civil? And we believe that the faith communities have a role to play in that, since they are based on love and compassion and goodwill towards others. And we want to work with them. We've talked with Bishop Kakanis, and we'll be talking with other religious leaders about this. We also, of course, want to raise money for some of the people who were there that day. You know, those of us who got shot, those of us who lost loved ones, have resources coming to us. We want to make sure that people who witnessed the events of that morning also have funding for counseling services if they need them, and part of our fund will be for that purpose.
Outstanding. And one big part of this is going to be a fundraising concert which is coming up on March 10th, that is this Thursday, at the Tucson Convention Center. And when I mentioned this is going to be an all-star lineup, Ron, I'm definitely not kidding. This featuring some of the artists including Jackson Browne, Alice Cooper, David Crosby and Graham Nash. We have Ozo Motley, Calexico, Keb Mo, just a number of amazing, amazing artists. Tell us a little bit about this particular concert and what part it plays in the entire fund itself. I mean, this is just hopefully the start of a lot of amazing things to come. And the artists that are taking part, I'm sure you have a couple of your favorites that are going to be participating as well.
We certainly do. You know, again, it comes out of our family discussion. Wanted to get the fund established, and then we thought, so how are we going to get money into the fund that we can do the things that we want to do? Our entire family are music lovers. My wife and I and our daughters, they've grown up with our music and, of course, their own as they got to be adults. But we really believe that music has a healing quality, a unifying quality, and that was one of the reasons we thought that music, a concert in particular, would be a good way to promote the fund and to bring in some money for the fund. Because the fund is about unity, it's about caring for each other, it's about respect. And so we reached out initially to Jackson Brown,
right?
And he was very receptive. We've known that, of course, he's done many benefits around the country for different causes. And so he came on board very early, and from there, with help from Alice Cooper, who lives in Arizona, we built this incredible lineup. And also, you know, if you want to look at another reason for these two particular artists coming together, politically, they're at different ends of the spectrum. You know, Alice Cooper is a conservative, and Jackson Brown is progressive or liberal. And that's another message. You know, we want to bring people together across the political spectrum, across different economic and social aspects of our community. So the concert is for healing, the concert is for unity, and of course it's to raise funds for our Fund for Civility, Respect and Understanding. It's going to be a great lineup, and some of our favorite artists, as you say, are there. Yeah.
Very cool. And tickets are going to be $25, $45, $65, and $95. They can be purchased by calling 800-745-3000. That number again, 800-745-3000. Or you can simply check out Ticketmaster.com. Again, this is happening on Thursday, March 10th. So that is this Thursday at the Tucson Convention Center. Again, the fundraiser for the Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding. And we kind of touched on it a little bit with the whole political aspect and bringing people together from both political sides, whether it be conservative, progressive, liberal, whatever the case may be. Had you found that in the days and the months and really the past few years, have you found that there's been a coarsening of the language and just some of the ways that people interact with one another when it comes to political discourse? My background was philosophy at the U of A, and so I was used to having those spirited political discussions, and sometimes you just completely disagree with one person or another, but at the end, you all understand that you're humans, you're Americans, whatever the case may be, and you do come together and reach some degree of understanding. Have you found that things have sort of deviated a little bit from the way they should be, and is that hopefully a way to try and get things back on track with this fund?
Absolutely. You know, the tone of political debate has, as you say, coarsened. We've seen vitriol, we've seen harsh rhetoric, we've seen demonizing of opponents on a personal level. And, you know, freedom of speech allows all of those things. We know this. But I do think that as Americans, and I really am a very great admirer of the American system as a person who came here from England when I was a teenager, I fell in love with the American system of government and with this entire community. And I've seen a decline or a deterioration in how we talk to one another. I can remember early on in my political activism days when Barry Goldwater on one side and Mo Udall on the other would obviously differ on issues, but they were gentlemanly about it. They had respect for each other, even though they might disagree. They were friends, but they had a robust and yet very civil conversation about what was going on. And that's a day that I hope we can return to. You know, it's okay to be upset or to protest against government policies on either side of the aisle. But I think when we go into language that is, as I said, uncivil or disrespectful, it's not a very good example for our children. When President Obama came and spoke at the memorial, he said something to the effect, let us behave in the way that Christina would have wanted us to behave, because she, as a young girl who was interested in politics, I think would want us to take the high road. And that's something that I've been proud to say Congresswoman Giffords has tried to do in her work. And so we want to try to restore that. And by having people from different political perspectives in the concert, on the stage, we're going to have different speakers at the first part of the concert. We hope to convey a message that, first and foremost, we're Americans, we're not a party label. And secondly, we can learn to talk with each other about challenging issues in a way that is good for the country and good for our community, doesn't bring us down to a base level of conversation.
Absolutely. And I remember the tragic days following 9/11, just being on the air here. And in the days and weeks following that, there seemed to be a great coming together of this nation, unified, whether it be from the left, for the right. It didn't matter your political party that day and in the weeks and really every day. But that really just drove home the fact that, again, that we are Americans. And I sort of got a similar sense in the days and weeks following the tragic events of January 8th, that Tucsonans were again willing to step up and maybe talk to their neighbors and embrace views that perhaps they might find antithetical to the views that they normally hold. Have you found that that has been sort of emergent in those days following January 8th? Obviously, with the president here, and we'll get to that in just a few moments. You touched on that. But have you found that things are beginning to heal, and is Tucson coming together, at least to a certain extent, the way that you like to see that happen?
Absolutely, and that's, again, some of the impetus for creating the fund. So we have a very special moment in our community. The tragedy, as awful as it was, has produced, as I say, this outpouring of goodwill, of compassion, of caring, and it goes across the spectrum. We've had emails and phone calls from people all the way, Republicans, Democrats, people who are on the right, the left, and the middle, and it's all been the same message. So that's what we want to hold on to and to build upon with these initiatives, these projects that are very local and very community-based, to try to use this positive energy in a way that's going to help us move forward as a unified community. Yeah, it's been incredible, and I'm really so proud of the people of Tucson and actually our state and in many ways the country for coming together in this way, and we want to hold on to that if we can.
Absolutely, and one way we can continue to hold on to that is through this concert, which again is happening on Thursday, March 10th. That is this Thursday. Still time to purchase tickets. The number to call, 800-745-3000. Again, 800-745-3000, or simply go to Ticketmaster.com. All of the various artists that we talked about who are going to be there. It's just going to be an amazing, amazing lineup. Again, for more information, 745-3000. That is an 800 number. Again, whether you're talking about Jackson Browne or Alice Cooper, David Crosby, Graham Nash, Calexico, Ozo Motley. There will be a number of guest speakers there, and it should be, again, just an amazing way for people to come together and hear some great music, hear some great messages, and all of it will be going as a fundraiser for the Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding. So, Ron, I just sort of wanted to touch again on the president's visit here to McHale Center. I was among those in the audience there as a member of the media, but I remember people lining up basically the night before. It was a packed house, people moving over to Arizona Stadium to witness it on the big screens they had there. Tell us a little bit about your experience that particular night and the hours leading up to that. I know it must have been a whirlwind for you.
It really was. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the McHale event in person. My doctors wouldn't let me out of my ICU room. They said I wasn't quite ready to be moving around. My family went, of course, and they were proud to meet the President and the First Lady. But earlier in that day, before the memorial that night, the President and the First Lady came to my ICU room, and we were really touched by their visit, how long they spent with us, how personally interested they seemed to be in our well-being, our grandkids, of course, and the pictures on the wall that they were looking at. And, we were very, very honored, obviously, to have the President come to see us that way. I remember the nurses and doctors told me I had to be in bed, because I was still just a day after second surgery. And I said, I'm not going to be in bed to greet the president, that's for sure. And no matter who the president was, you have to, I think, respect the office. And so they put me in a chair. And then as the president walked in, I said to myself, I can't be sitting down when the president of the United States walks in. So with the help of my family, I did get up to greet him and shake his hand. And he gave me a hug, and we talked for a moment or two, and then he said, you sit down, because it was obvious that I was having a hard time standing, but it was really marvelous. They went to visit every one of the people who were still in the hospital. I know at McHale they met with all of the families, including those who lost loved ones.
Right.
This was not only for the nation and for our community, it was very personal, and we were all touched, I think, by how they greeted us and how much time they spent with us.
And you mentioned just the healing process. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, how are you able to hold up physically right now? And I know that this has been so incredibly traumatic, not only for you and your family, but for the entire community. So how are you holding up right now, Ron?
Well, I'm coming along, I'm kind of impatient about getting things done. I want to get back to work. I want to do more around the house. I don't want Nancy, my wife, to be, so much having to take care of me. But I've learned over the last few weeks to sort of adjust my expectations about how quickly I'm going to heal. The 2 bullets that went into me, one in particular caused a lot of damage. The one in my face, thank goodness, passed through my cheek and out the back of my neck, missed my carotid artery by a couple of millimeters, but nevertheless did no real harm in that area. The bullet to my leg, however, went right through the femoral vein, which had to be replaced from my right leg to my left. And I've got a lot of nerve damage in the leg from the knee down through my foot, so I can't really feel much. A little bit of feeling in my ankle and on the left side or the right side of my calf, but everything else is frozen. And I have what they call drop foot, which means I can't pick up my foot when I walk. So I've now finally got a brace a few days ago for my foot and my leg, which gives me the kind of support I need. And I'm beginning to learn how to walk again. I haven't really walked in about 7 weeks. My muscles don't have much tone, and not feeling my foot is also problematic. But now I'm on the brace, have the brace on. I can walk a little bit with a cane, and I'm building my stamina that way, which is another important part, just getting some energy back.
Sure.
So physically, I'm coming along, but I'd be less than honest if I didn't say that the emotional aspect of this is a real challenge. I'm sure I'm not alone. I think everyone who was there that day has experienced a real trauma.
Absolutely.
And I believe that what I need to do is, really work on that, be, honest about it. I think that it's important for the community to know that when you have, as I do now, post-traumatic stress, that it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be sort of stuffed away. It's like any other illness or health problem. You have to face it. You have to get help for it. And that's the only way you're going to grow and improve. So I'm working on both of those things, and we're moving along, hopefully.
The surgeons at University Medical Center, just amazing work that was done by them. I think that all of us in the community realize what a tremendous asset and resource and really blessing it is to have University Medical Center there, and particularly when you're talking about the trauma center. But I don't think anybody realized the extent to which the doctors, the nurses, all of the people involved are really, they're genuine godsends, they're angels, whatever you want to call them. Was the experience that you found with them to be, I understand that obviously nobody wants to be in the hospital, but did you realize what tremendous, wonderful care that you're going to be receiving there?
Oh, that's right. I sure did. That was my first experience, of course, after the shooting, because the next place I ended up was in the emergency room and then the operating room with the trauma team. I can't say enough good about the medical care that we received from everyone at UMC. I think we've always known that we've had this treasure, but now the whole country knows, in fact, the world knows what an incredible facility we have and the physicians. It's very personal, too. It's not just sort of, medical care and then the rest of the needs that you have are not considered. Dr. Ree, for example, head of this trauma team, came into my room every single day to check on me. When I left the hospital, he called me and wanted to know how I was doing. I thought, well, this is a nice brief call. A half an hour later, we were still talking.
Wow.
Our nurses, particularly Tracy Colbert and Buck, just couldn't be better. They care with their hearts as well as their skills. Every single person that we met at that hospital did a wonderful job for us and for our family. That's the other thing. They didn't forget that the family is also traumatized and needing support. They even, bent the rules a little bit and let my grandkids come in to see me in the ICU, and they prepared them well for that visit. To see their granddad, with all these things, tubes hanging out of him, was a little bit of a shock, but they prepared them for that. It's a fantastic facility, and we should be very proud that we have it here. I believe that had the trauma center not been in place the way it is, several more of us would have died that morning, and we're alive because of their skills.
Absolutely. And I remember, Ron, some of the first images that we saw in the days following that terrible day. One of the very first that we received was a photo of you in your hospital bed with a great big smile. And it had been, I believe, that you'd received some gifts from your grandchildren.
I had. One of them in particular was very special to me. And my granddaughter, Tilly, with her own money, which is a kind of a big deal for a 7-year-old, went to a store and spent a long time trying to find just the right gift for me, for Poppy, as she calls me. And it was a beautiful green stuffed heart with the word "hug me" on it, which I still have, of course, at home in a place where I can see it all the time. Yeah, that was good. But one more thing I want to say about the care. Before I got to the hospital, there were people who came to my aid at the site of the shooting. One person in particular, Anna Ballas, I believe saved my life. The bullet missing my carotid artery was lucky, but I was very fortunate that when the shooting stopped, Anna came to my aid. She crawled under a table to get to me. She could see that I was bleeding profusely from my leg, and she put her hands over the wound and essentially stopped the bleeding. And the doctors have said that had she not done that, I would have died from just bleeding out that morning. Probably 5 minutes bleeding and I would have been gone. She held that pressure for at least 15 or maybe 20 minutes, trembling, she told me, as she was doing it, afraid to let go. But I really believe that Anna saved my life, and other people saved other lives too that morning. Just ordinary citizens who came to our aid. It was an incredible showing of support from people who were complete strangers.
Absolutely. And I think those are some of the stories that we will continue to hear. I've had the opportunity to talk to some of the heroes of that day, and it's just amazing to hear those stories of somebody being thrown into just a horrific situation and having the fortitude and the spirit and the heart to do what needed to be done that moment. And a lot of times people wonder if they would have the ability to do that, and I think it really drove home the fact that there lies a hero in each of us.
That's
and
right.
It does take a tragic event, unfortunately, to bring that out. So tell us a little bit about, you've mentioned the way you're coming along physically and obviously mentally. What are some of the things that help sustain you through those days? I know it's got to be, I can't say obviously from personal experience, but I can only imagine that it's got to be very difficult. So what are some of the things that help sustain you on a daily basis?
Well, certainly nothing in my life, I imagine most people would say this, even remotely prepares you for a situation like this. We never imagine we're going to be shot, and certainly in a circumstance like that. The sustenance that I get comes from many different places. First of all, the kind of support that we've received from the community at large. I mean, people have brought us meals, flowers, books, chocolates, one of my favorites. You can't heal without chocolates.
Definitely.
And they've come to our house just to share some time with us. It's been remarkable, and it's still going on,
Sure.
Obviously, my family, my wife of now almost 44 years, my children, my grandkids, my sons-in-law, my extended family, Nancy's sisters, and everybody have been so much a part of the healing process and the support for me, and that's what sustains me. I've had really great medical support. I've got a physical therapist who comes to my home twice a week. I do exercises every day to try to get my energy back and my legs swelling down. I just, from everyone, I mean, there's not one thing I can say has been sustaining. All of it has been. And I'm just so grateful for this community and for my family and the medical care I've received. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. I just know that.
Absolutely. And again, we're talking about one event which is coming up this Thursday, which is March 10th, a fundraiser for the nonprofit Community Foundation for Southern Arizona, and it benefits the newly established Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding. This is a fund that has been put together by Mr. Barber and his family. We do appreciate it so very much.
I just wanted to say about the concert. It's a concert obviously to raise money for our fund, but we also want to make sure that people are honored for what they did on January 8th. So we're providing complimentary tickets to all of the first responders who just did an amazing job. I mean, can you imagine, as they came upon this absolute carnage, 19 bodies, and they did a remarkable job. Complimentary tickets also to the survivors, to the people who were heroic that day. We want to make sure that they are given appropriate tribute and honor, and they'll be hopefully in the front rows of the concert on Thursday, the 10th of March.
Absolutely. I mean, that is just incredibly fitting. And for members of the community who would like to take part, again, you can simply go to Ticketmaster.com or call the number 800-745-3000. Again, 800-745-3000. This is happening on March 10th, which is a Thursday, beginning at 6 p.m. Among the artists taking part, Jackson Brown, David Crosby and Graham Nash, Alice Cooper from up the road in Phoenix. So it's going to be a very, very good night. And again, all to benefit the newly formed Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding. You mentioned, as we were talking earlier, the fact that you're having to relearn how to walk. Some other survivors are having to relearn to do other things that many of us take for granted. Is there a positive coming out of this, in that I know that every day is a blessing, but for you that must be doubly, triply, quadruply so. Have you found that the case?
Oh, no question. Some days I get a little frustrated with not being able to do things, and a little frustrated with the mental aspect of this. But then I think how fortunate I am to be alive. On either side of me that morning, two wonderful people died. Gabe Zimmerman, who we just love dearly, our outreach director, left a huge hole in our hearts. And on the other side of me, an equally wonderful person, Judge John Roll, who I was speaking with when the shooting started. And I wonder, how is it that on either side of you, people died and you survived? I'm just eternally grateful for that. I've got a lot more things I want to do in my life, a lot more time I want to spend with my family, and now I've been given that chance, and I'm very, very grateful for that. Could I just say one more thing about the concert, though?
Please do.
We have a great lineup, but there are some people that we've added, at least one artist that I think people in Tucson particularly would want to know about, and that's Roger Klein and the Peacemakers. It's a group I've learned more and more in the last few weeks. It's very popular in these parts, particularly for folks down in Rocky Point.
Hugely so.
Where they put on a benefit every year for the orphanage down there. And so they were added to the bill just a couple of weeks ago, and they're not typically mentioned when we talk about the lineup. We also have Dar Williams, who is a favorite in Tucson. She's been here many times. And Keb Mo, a great blues artist. We, I think, have music for all tastes that evening. It's going to be a long concert, so people need to maybe bring their pillows. It's going to start at 6, probably won't be over until about 11 o'clock that night, given the lineup that we have. We need a lot of time to get all of these great artists on stage.
And the artists that you've spoken with, they seem to be pretty receptive to this, and they understand what it's all about, you think?
They really do. Every artist is donating their time, which is a big deal, because these folks, need to get paid like everyone else. Jackson Brown is underwriting some of the costs from his own foundation or fund. We've received a lot of support from our community, discounted hotels for the artists and the crew. Donated food for backstage has been given to us by many of the local businesses. Everyone we've turned to has said yes, and the artists are really leading that. And each of these artists come with a message of hope and optimism and goodwill. So we're really happy that the kind of artists that are coming reinforce the message that we have with the fund.
You mentioned the hope. Have you found that in the weeks and the months that have now passed, it's now almost been 2 months since that terrible day. It's hard to imagine that time has passed so quickly, and at the same time, it's been almost surreal. I know that immediately following those days, I was on the air for whether it be the BBC or Al Jazeera, places across the world, Australia, New Zealand, so many places were interested in what was happening. And as I was listening to the announcers introduce and give the story about what had happened, it almost felt surreal. You couldn't believe that they were actually talking about Tucson, our Tucson, the town that I was born in. Have you found that things have been slowly coming back, and the image that Tucson has, do you think that this will help, I don't want to say repair it, but hopefully give people a different face and a different sense from outside of the community? Because we all realize how amazing Tucson is, but I don't think the rest of the world realizes it. And do you hope that a concert such as this will help put, I guess, that face back on it?
Absolutely. I do think, though, that in some ways the real image of Tucson emerged in the days following. For example, Brian Williams, who's the anchor for NBC News,
right.
We met with him privately and we went on the air with him a little bit. And I know that in his commentary, he was just saying this community has just come together in an amazing way, and he's so right about that. One of the things I found about the media across the board is how sensitive they were to us as people who'd been through this tragedy. In some cases, reporters would interview me, and they were weeping. It's really incredible what was going on, the emotional impact that what we were dealing with was having on people who were maybe strangers to our community. I think the concert will reinforce the positive message that we're trying to get across, but I also think that if one were to look at what happened immediately afterwards in our community, the outpouring and the memorials, the 3 vigils that were set up at UMC, at our congressional office, and over at the Safeway, all examples of what this community really is about. It's not about this tragic incident.
Right.
We cannot allow Tucson to be marked that way. What we have to be able to say and continue to say is Tucson is what happened afterwards and what we saw coming from our community, which was so positive.
Absolutely. Very well said, sir. Again, we're talking about the show, which is coming up 6 p.m. on Thursday. That is March 10th. It's going to be happening at the Tucson Convention Center. This is to benefit the Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding. Among those who will be performing that night, Jackson Brown, Alice Cooper, David Crosby and Graham Nash, Ozo Motley, Calexico, Keb Mo, Roger Klein and the Peacemakers. So just a number of great artists. Again, if you would like to purchase tickets, the number to call, 800-745-3000. Again, 800-745-3000 or Ticketmaster.com. There are ticket prices ranging from $25 all the way up to $95. Again, this will be a great night of music, of hope, of coming together. And again, it is to benefit the Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding. Ron, again, I just would like to thank you very much for coming in, telling us your story. I know it's very, very difficult, and we do appreciate so very much what you and your family have been through, and all of not only the survivors, but the victims of January 8th. We hope that the money raised will continue to go, as you mentioned, to support the Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding, because this is not about being left or right or any side of the political spectrum. This is really about coming together as Tucsonans, as Americans, and really as human beings. And again, we appreciate all that you've done for the community and all that you continue to do.
Thank you, Paul. It's really great to be with you, and thank you for letting us send this message to our community as well as to talk about this great benefit. It'll be a wonderful night of music, and I hope that Tucson will turn out in great big numbers for that.
Absolutely. Again, the number to call, 800-745-3000, or check out Ticketmaster.com. My name is Paul Birmingham. You've been listening to Talk of Tucson.